Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and I'm also, like a lot of people, looking forward to the end of this pandemic. I'm not suffering as much as many millions are in this country. Relatively low impact on me, it could be argued, but it is tiresome all the same. But earlier this week, Boris Johnson told Parliament that he'd be revealing an exit strategy from the pandemic soon. So I thought I'd take a little look at what that might look like. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. But anyway, exit strategy. So Johnson has now promised one. He's been asked for one for over half a year now. How are we going to get through this? And I'll be honest, I'm not going to get my hopes up. Now, there has never been an exit strategy throughout this pandemic. We're not talking about an updated exit strategy. There has never been one in this country. There have been bits of one. There's been exit strategies for lockdown, say, or for, test and trace or whatever. But none of these components have ever gone according to plan. So the idea of having multiple components in one functioning full exit strategy for the whole pandemic, and that's what he said in Parliament it was for, I'm not going to invest too much hope in it. But Professor Pagel, who is one of the independent sage scientists, has written a blog with her 4 elements, which would form part of an exit strategy. So it could be things that the government might produce, and I think it's worth taking a look at and considering the politics of how likely each element is not only to be in there, but to be successful. Now, the first thing I'll point out in her blog, and I'll link it below, of course, for you to read yourself. I'm not going to go through all of it. She does point out now there are different countries have approached this in different ways. Some countries approached it very genuinely in different ways. Some just didn't want to do what was being advised. But it's now been a year and we've seen which countries have done well and which ones haven't. And what she's noted is, she said that she is not aware of a single country successfully living with the virus. She's seen countries that try and live with the virus, but then you just end up with this cycle of restrictions and lockdowns like we have in the UK, or a high death toll like we have in the UK. Like she said, we have both. Not all countries do. Some countries have this cycle of lockdowns, but they manage the situation. Some countries don't have this cycle of lockdowns, but they end up with a high death toll. We get both because we have the lockdowns, but we do it far too late. The only countries that are on top of this are the ones who suppress the virus. They have a strategy of suppression. In other words, trying to eliminate it. And but then bearing that in mind. So for those who may think, well, there are other ways. No, we now know. A year ago, you could try and argue these things. I'm not sure even then they'd have been given too much credibility, but now, no. So 4 things she says we need as part of an effective exit strategy. And she does also make clear, of course, that you never ever come out of it until the whole world has come out of it, because people travel. But in terms of what we could do as a nation, first she says an attempt to vaccinate the entire adult population, to prevent various things, not just dying, but long COVID and so on. Now, the issue there, of course, is that is actually something the government are pursuing. So that should be a no-brainer. Obviously, we know that vaccination is going to be part of their exit strategy. The government, for example, they haven't done what they did last year. And I know and I've talked about this before from both points of view, in terms of the way the government are pursuing their vaccination strategy, that there are genuine debates within the scientific community. I'm not bothered about outside of the scientific community, within the scientific community. But that being said, they haven't done what they did with PPE and test and trace and given it to a load of unsuitable made-up companies to deliver. So that, they are getting the NHS to roll it out, and we're carrying out a lot of doses for it. So that could be not only one part of the strategy that is in place, but that actually works. We can retain some hopes for that, with a bit of scepticism, because again, I just come down to that. It's not that I can't buy the government's rationale on how they're going about the vaccinations. It's that they're not being straight with us. They keep saying For example, they keep saying when someone's had one dose that they've been vaccinated. They haven't been vaccinated. They've been given one dose. That's not the same thing. The second thing she says we need to have strong restrictions in place until we've driven cases back down to the levels that we had in summer. Now, the thing is, if you look at the number of new cases per day now, and it's on a very steep gradient downwards, and it's still very high. We have to bear in mind, it's come down a lot. The lockdown has done its job. It's brought it very far down. And you could look at the trajectory and you could say, okay, Boris Johnson's now talking about trying to get schools open for the 8th of March, that week beginning the 8th of March. Not necessarily all schools, but, that's when he wants schools to start opening up. And you look at it and you think, okay, if it carries on its current trajectory, it could get there by the 8th of March. It could actually get down to the point where we've only got, like I say, only about 1,000 new cases a day. But that, for us, it would be luxury. My issue there is you cannot just assume that trajectory is going to continue. And in fact, I think it's unlikely to. Because if you look at France, for example, when they got past their first peak of the second wave, theirs came down quite sharply, but it never got down very low. It got down to about 10,000 or something. It's now up. It's creeping up again. It's not shooting up, but it is creeping up again. In fact, we're going to be, they've nearly caught up to us again. We're sort of going to go down. They're going to go up a bit. But ours may level off, just like France's did. We cannot say, oh, yeah, it'll just carry on like that. We don't know that. So that's my issue there. And if it doesn't go down to those levels in the time frame the government expect or hope for, are they going to persist with the restrictions? Are the government, when we know that their backbenchers and other parts of the media that support the Conservatives are crying out for the restrictions to be lifted, they're already wanting pubs open, for goodness sake, are the government going to forge ahead and actually do this? This is the one where I have an issue with it, because I think the government will play politics with this. I don't think that if it doesn't, I think if it's one of those things, if it does go according to plan and it comes down in a reasonable amount of time, then that's fine. I think if it doesn't, and it looks like they'd have to keep the restrictions in place for an extended period of time, I don't think they've got the political backbone to do that. So I have worries about this second one. The third one, she says, just so I don't go on too long, rebuild the local contact tracing capability to aggressively drive cases down further, and other stuff in there. You can read it yourself. Here's my thing. The problem with that is test and trace is still in the hands of the private companies, the largely unsuitable private companies as well. And Dido Harding, although we haven't heard anything from her this whole year, I think, she's still in charge of it. And this is where I worry. When you've got an eminent scientist saying we need to do this, not we should do this, or this is the best way to do it, but there are other ways. It's not her saying, oh, I think this would be the best way to do it, but the government's got an idea, it might work. She's not saying that. She's saying we need to do this. I don't think that's going to be done, because it would be a massive climb down. And I know they've had plenty of U-turns, but this would have to be a massive climb down. Remember, they're trying to push the idea that private enterprise is the way forward with our healthcare system. They're trying to privatise it. In fact, they are privatising it, but they're trying to accelerate that privatisation. I have, and if they keep it in the hands of unsuitable private companies, it will not ever be fit for purpose. So I have serious doubts about that as well. In fact, I'd almost discount it completely, except you can never discount anything in politics. And then the fourth thing she says is about the strong border controls with negative tests before and after travel, and a 14-day managed isolation on entry for everyone, including returning citizens, and so on. They've only just started to put border controls in. I'm sure border controls will be part of their exit strategy, but at the same time, I don't think it's going to be like this. First of all, this 14-day isolation, it'll be 10, well, it is 10 days. They're not going to do the 14-day thing. I also have my doubts about their competence in managing this, because they've already tried to do it and it was a right mess. There was a situation, Yvette Cooper was trying to ask questions in Parliament, asking why it was that when the government tried to finally put these restrictions in place, they ended up with a massive blob of people altogether. The whole purpose, bear in mind, is to avoid people infecting each other. And then they had this huge crush of people who were supposed to be queuing up, waiting to hand their documents over, proving they've had a negative COVID test. And it was like a Hillsborough type scenario, because what they ended up doing was just opening the doors and letting everyone through, thinking, Jesus Christ, huge crush of people, let's just let them all through. And there was people saying they hadn't had their things checked. So there were people coming to the country that were supposed to have these documents checked, weren't getting them checked. So we have no idea. Other than the hope that people wouldn't try to get in if they hadn't got the paperwork, because if it was checked, they wouldn't get through. And that would just be hassle for them. So again, there's an issue of competence on this one. Can they actually handle it? I've no doubt that some sort of border restrictions will finally, a year late, well, 10 months late, be part of the plan. I have no confidence that it will be as tight a restrictions as it should be. And I have no confidence that it will even work as they intend because of a basic competence issue. So there we go. 4 things suggested. 1 I think we'll do. 2 of them I think are politically tricky. In fact, I'd almost discount one of them completely. And 1 of them I think we've got an issue of competence. So that's not looking great. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.